once again.
Well, Rutledge, that's a pretty bold move. So I think we could call that a draw, or at least an incomplete.
We'll call that an incomplete. We're
And
not doing all
or
times teams.
oh, we're not. Come on,
We're not. I'm watching you. Proof that this
see,
is a live sports show. We have bloopers and blunders all the time. Proof that we are amateur sports podcasters.
that is so true.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna switch my teams, if you don't mind. Do you mind if I switch my teams?
Okay, what are you gonna do?
I'm gonna be the Pelicans.
You're gonna be the Pelicans?
I'm gonna be the Pellies because the Pellies are soon to be a hopeful MVP candidate in Zion.
He is hurt though. He's out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and
Well,
so
I'm
is
gonna go.
Jalen Brown, by the way. Talk about the
Yeah,
wheels falling off for the Celtics.
they really did. Well, fine. If we're going out in the future, then I'm gonna be the Atlanta Hawks because Trey Young is my secret basketball best friend.
Ooh, old Trey Young.
Plus, I
I don't
like.
love his goatee. I don't love it. I don't love what the facial hair that Trey Young has going on.
Yeah, I do like Atlanta's swag though. It's kind of like it's a throwback look, but plus they modernized it. Out of all the things Nike's done to sort of help grow everybody, what they have in Atlanta, look at that core. That's so hot. I just love that so much. Hot Atlanta.
That's so hot right now.
Okay, well we're back. We're bringing it to the future because it's time for Connor and I, and we have more time to debate, so this can be a good thing. So we're gonna talk and go over some debate topics that we have. And as this goes, our first topic tonight is we are going to be sitting down and we're going to discuss which type of championship is harder to win. So we have two sports that we're doing, and we're going to go NBA and we're going to go NFL. Connor, which one are you going to pick tonight to defend?
I think that I don't think you need much defense on this. The NFL is both. It's always hard to win a title. The NFL is much harder to win a title than the NBA,
Well, I'm glad you
no
said
doubt.
that because I think it's way harder to win in the NBA. So, I will give you my take. So we're going to go back in
Please do.
time. Oh, I will. First, I want to get this shot to go in.
Oh,
Oh,
can't even get that right. Come on, man.
no. I can't get the shot. I can't play the game. Okay. So as it goes in the wide world of basketball, before we even go in that basketball world, I want to compare two greats. I want to talk about Tom Brady and I want to talk about the one and only Michael Jordan. And we're going to zoom in on while Tom Brady didn't win a championship in this season, we're going to talk about 2007 for when he went out there and had a defeated team, and then we're going to talk about Tom Brady's Michael Jordan in 1996, very famous Lakers.
You're just so I can understand. You're comparing a year in which Brady did not win a title to a year that Jordan did win a title.
Correct. But here's what I want to
Okay.
say is the structure
Okay.
of schedule and why it's harder to win a championship in the NBA. Brady had a 16 game season, which they went undefeated, plus all the way got into the Super Bowl. As that goes, on that schedule, they still played the Buffalo Bills, the Jets, and the Dolphins twice. All were trash. They only had less than 4 games that were even within a touchdown, and really only one they struggle against the Ravens and they struggle against the Giants, who beat them in the Super Bowl because of a catch that could have happened because there was gum on the top of someone's helmet. In the NFL, your scheduling department and how the NFL gives you a schedule and what division you sit in and how good those organizations are really does you a lot of favors because 8 of your games are against very predictable teams. And even though they had what is considered one of, in my opinion, the greatest quarterbacks of all time, the NBA, the Patriots still had to sit there and they got in trouble for filming Jets practice. They've done some other stuff bad on social media. So it's not as if they just cruised into it. When Michael Jordan won MVP in 1996 and they won a championship, which, like I said, not faulting that Tom Brady did not that year, people that he still had to play against were just have a couple names written down here. Uh, some of these names, had to beat Charles Barkley, Shaquille O'Neal, David Robinson, Karl Malone were all active players in the
He
leagues. All
he
of
beat
those
them in the
are,
same year in '96.
he did.
Just curious, just wondering.
Just curious. Yes, all of those were studs. And you have to go through a very long gauntlet of a schedule, plus then play 7-game playoff series. And the parity of a roster in the NBA is much farther than it is in the NFL. Let's take the Lakers. The Lakers last year, LeBron gets hurt, AD gets hurt, they lose Rondo, they lose Howard for their bench depth. They went from beating the Miami Heat like a tiger playing with its food in front of the parents that made that food to now they are in a situation to where they might get a first playoff buyout, knockout, not just because they just don't have all the pieces in place. So the power of one, to quote the famous Jet Li movie, The One, there can only be the one. The power of one in the NBA matters so much more that if you don't have it put together, it's not going to work. So that's my opening kind of ramble about why the NBA is so much harder. There's so many things that have to go right than just saying, oh, look at my schedule. I have a smart quarterback. Here we go.
Well, first off, Rutledge, I want to thank you for. We could really end right now. You actually just made my point for me, comparing Michael Jordan's '96 season where he did win a title, where Tom Brady, if you're talking about winning a championship, he couldn't even win a championship with probably the greatest offense of all time. You want to talk about winning a title and the success and what's needed there throughout the course of a season. I think that one to talk about your point of teams. Yes, Jordan having to beat all those players, David Robinson, Charles Barkley, things like that. You're talking about regular season, which let's remember, as we always talk about, in the NBA, there's really 3 seasons. You've got the season up until the All-Star break. You've got the season after the All-Star break, and then you've got the season during the NBA playoffs. So, I think as it relates to Jordan maybe beating good players, which Tom Brady also beat good players. Just to continue your conversation there, it's different in the playoffs than it is a regular season.
Vince
Doesn't matter
Carter
what
just beat
sport
all
you're in.
your players. And his knees
Doesn't
don't
matter
even
what
work.
sports you're in. It's always harder in the playoffs than the regular season. Number two, you talk about organizational structure and things like that. Let's think about the intricacies of an organizational structure to have just 15 versus 53. 15 players versus 53 players, and then 24 positions on a roster. So the amount of orchestration that goes into one play in football, let alone the amount of plays throughout the course of a regular season, is substantial. You can have within an NBA game, you can have one player have a bad night that's on the starting roster, and MJ goes off for 55, and then all of a sudden the Bulls have a 1-0 series advantage, right? So, whereas one play, right, that might not even happen to you, but one really good play from the other team is the reason why you lose, a la the catch of the Giants versus the Patriots. And number 3, to roundly rebuke you, you say the grind of a playoff series. You know what that means, actually? The grind of an NBA playoff series means that it's not win or go home. You have to when you're in the NFL playoffs, it is do or die every week. Every week throughout the course of the playoffs, it is do or die. And I think that it's harder to win through the NFL playoffs because there are less playoff games to play, and because everything is so much more intricate and so much more. There's so much more on the line. So now, if I can maybe spend just a brief second, Rutledge, and I'll let you have the last word on this. I think that we always need to remember throughout the course of a season. The other thing that the NBA does not have nearly as much of is injuries. Your best players, your best players will play and do your best plays. And quite frankly, the NBA, there are injuries for sure, but the NFL, you talk about in terms of a war of attrition and a battle throughout the course of a regular season, just making sure guys are healthy. I've played on deep run playoff teams. You aren't healthy by the end of a season. And to be able to fight through that mentally, I think, is incredibly important and more difficult than a basketball title.
See, the NBA has an MVP, and then they have a playoff MVP because the playoffs in the NBA are so much of a gauntlet that yes, you're not getting hit. You're not out there in the grass getting hit, the snow, the rain, the mud getting hit. But the true mastery it takes to have to get through an entire season to get seeded in a tournament and then do well in that tournament is so much more of an impact.
You have 82 games.
That's a lot. That's a lot of strategy. You got to save. So
That
look at if
that's a
you
lot of nights off. You don't see load management in the NBA, do you? Or the NFL, rather.
there was load management with the Colts one year. They could have gone undefeated and they did not because they were doing load management. It happens in week 16. That's why you have to have your fantasy season one.
Oh, I
That's the
think that
that was
the
Lonzo
the
Ball's
difference
best
between
play
the
of his
NFL
life.
load management and the NBA load management is resting starters, resting a group of starters where you already have your playoff seed locked up versus doing it on a October or November night just because you're playing quote Memphis, a team that you could probably beat regardless. I think goes to show that the amount of games also leads to the conversation of why it is harder to win in the NFL than the NBA. But do you have any more last words before we move on to our final argument of the night, which
We
we'll
have
have
so
plenty
much more
more?
time, so I have so much more words. It's the um what I think in that with the NBA taking the time is that sure you could say that people get rest in October, November when they're playing Orlando and then they travel and they play Memphis. However, that is in order to save you for the long haul of it because Connor, you even said it yourself tonight. The Lakers without LeBron James playing the Golden State Warriors, that's something that you need to have your best people on the floor for because when it matters, it matters. If it was in a series, it would even matter more. Let's not even go back and look at how crucial the series was of Warriors versus Raptors when the Raptors finally brought a championship home to Canada. If it wasn't for the Kevin Durant injury, which we all watched his Achilles just disappear live on national television, the Raptors would have lost in a 7-game series. The Miami Heat with their famous comeback to where um, the trophy got unveiled on the floor for the Spurs, and the Heat came back in Game 6 and then took it in Game 7. The ability to win a series or lose a series for some teams and how tough it is to close, even though the Spurs had that series won and even though the Warriors had the best roster, to be able to close out and win a series is harder than just playing to the devotion of 60 minutes of football.
I
Be-
think you're having a different conversation with yourself. Not to say that there's not more drama or more excitement throughout the course of a NBA playoff series, but to have you talk about the Spurs versus the Heat series where they had that out there, they have the trophy out there, and I think that as all you needed is one game, right? And you, because it's a series, it was okay that the Heat lost and lost those other games. There is zero margin for error in the NFL playoffs. There is 3 games worth of margin of error each round in the NBA playoffs. You can, as we talk about, Kevin Durant's injury changed the course of the series, not the game. You look even back in history, right? Isaiah Thomas, when he went down with his injury, that changed the course of the series. So it'll be tough to. I think being able to say, look, you've got just the one game and the less margin of error. Not only that, but it's not like the NFL's a slouch of a season either, right? You talk about the grind of the NFL or the NBA, night in, night out. NFL, that's a little bit of a grind as well, especially as you are making deep, deep, deep playoff runs, playing loads of night games, playing on potentially short weeks. As the NFL playoffs start, having to travel cross country. Those the flight from Green Bay to Seattle is not short. And in fact, the NBA has until recently the NBA Finals, that 2-3-2 format was actually created, and the NBA will change their schedules to lighten travel. So you've got a variety of factors that, especially as it relates to the playoffs, that are very, just that margin of error is so tough in the NFL. And as it relates to the playoffs, I'll share a quick story with you here. We're going to go back into the Wheaton College machine. When my sophomore year, when Wheaton College made it all the way to the semifinals, we rode a running back named Rocky Ging all the way up until the semifinals. The quarterfinals, when we played Franklin College, Rocky got hurt that game and was really struggling just to remain healthy. That one game, the carryover from Rocky's injury from the previous game to the next game had an incredible impact on that semifinal game. So not only is the margin of error small, but one injury from a previous round could have plenty of impact, as opposed to a long NBA series where you kind of just got to hang on for your best player to come back and kind of go from there.
Well, I will say that in this argument we will agree to disagree.